In the early 1960s, a new kind of conflict was brewing in the jungles and rice paddies of Southeast Asia. It was a war without fronts, a war of shadows and ambushes. Conventional armies, built to fight on the plains of Europe, found themselves trapped by the terrain. The foot soldier was king, but he was also isolated, vulnerable, and slow. America needed a new way to fight. The solution came not from a tank, but from a revolutionary machine developed by the Bell Helicopter Company. It was the Model 204, officially named the Iroquois. But to the troops who would soon depend on it for their very lives, it had a different name, the Huey. Its arrival in Vietnam in 1962 was a whisper, but it would soon become a roar. For the first time, commanders could move entire battalions of troops over impassable terrain, landing them directly into the heart of a battle. The Huey became the symbol of a new kind of warfare, air cavalry. It was a troop transport, a supply line, a flying ambulance that rescued the wounded from hot landing zones, and a gunship that rained down fire with rockets and miniguns. The distinctive thump-thump-thump of its two blades became the sound of the war itself, a sound of hope for some, a sound of dread for others. But this new tactic created a new vulnerability. The versatile Huey, when loaded with troops, was a large, relatively slow target. Its slick transport ships needed protection. The Hog gunships helped, but they were improvised, carrying the weight of both troops and weapons. The Army needed a dedicated hunter. This need splintered into two paths. One path was pure radical ambition. The Army's Advanced Aerial Fire Support System, or AAFSS program, sought to create the ultimate super helicopter. The winner was Lockheed's AH-56 Cheyenne, a complex rigid rotor compound helicopter with a pusher propeller, designed to be faster and more lethal than anything in the sky. It was a technological marvel. The second path was pragmatic and immediate. Bell, seeing the Cheyenne as too complex and too far away, proposed an interim snake. They took the Huey's proven engine and rotor system and grafted them onto a new, impossibly thin fuselage. The AH-1 Cobra was a true attack helicopter. While the revolutionary Cheyenne was mired in technical problems and spiraling costs, Bell's stopgap Cobra proved to be exactly what the Army needed, right now. This is the story of the workhorse Huey, the pragmatic Cobra, and the ambitious Cheyenne that represented a future that just couldn't be tamed.
One sight and one sound personify the Vietnam War more than any other. The Bell UH-1 Iroquois helicopter, universally known as the Huey, remains the definitive icon of American involvement in Vietnam. No one served in Vietnam without becoming personally familiar with the distinct sound and sight of the Huey. The Huey served with the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines in a variety of roles. Designed by Bell as a utility helicopter, the Huey's versatility allowed the aircraft to be adapted to fill whatever needs might arise. Its incredible legacy propelled the Bell Helicopter Company to unprecedented success and revolutionized the role of the helicopter. During the Vietnam War, the work of the Huey, combined with other helicopters, ushered a new element into military strategy. And now the helicopter stands as an integral component of military forces throughout the world. Built in greater numbers than almost any other aircraft in history, the Huey has become a member of a select group of great planes. Yet, as an American icon, it stands alone. To the more than 2.6 million Americans who served in Vietnam, in the face of a hostile enemy, and in the wake of unprecedented domestic turmoil at home, the Huey conjures images of friends lost and saved, a proud symbol for the brave souls whose lives were forever changed by the devastation of war. Bell's Huey emerged as the product of one of aviation's most fascinating innovators, Arthur Young. Young, born in Paris in 1905, went to Princeton determined to make a contribution to the field of philosophy, a contribution he felt impossible without success in the field of technology. After a visit to the U.S. Patent Office in 1927, Young became focused on conquering the challenge of the helicopter. For more than a decade, Young worked alone in a barn in Connecticut, continually testing and redesigning small models of his helicopter. In 1941, Young demonstrated one of his models to Larry Bell, the founder and president of the Bell Aircraft Company. Bell showed a keen interest in Young's work and hired Young to develop his helicopter. Driven by an unwavering belief in the future value of the helicopter, Bell decided to pay for development without government funds. Within 18 months, Young and other Bell engineers had built the first Bell helicopter, Model 30. On a cold winter day, Young and his colleagues debuted Model 30. The day was filled with problems, beginning with having to adjust the landing skids in order to get the aircraft out of the hangar. Once out of the hangar, the engine failed to start. Hardly anyone was impressed. Young was persistent, and after a few modifications, tests were continued. For several months, these tests were limited to tethered flights, designed to learn about the aircraft's mobility and stability. These tests allowed Young to immediately determine whether enough power was available to lift the aircraft off the ground. Young often tested the aircraft himself, although the first accident occurred with another pilot at the helm. The Bell pilot was thrown out of his seat and through the rotor. Incredibly, the pilot escaped with only a broken wrist, and the test continued. Bell test pilot Floyd Carlson, fresh from testing Bell fighters, was assigned to the project, and he quickly learned to hover the aircraft. Under Carlson's control, the Model 30's first free flight came in the spring of 1943. The design of the Model 30 unveiled two integral innovations which emerged as predominant features of Bell helicopters. First, the aircraft had a wide two-blade main rotor, hinged at the rotor head. Second, the Model 30 had a stabilizer bar mounted at 90 degrees to the main rotor blades, with streamlined weights at each end. Interconnected to the control system of the helicopter, the bar stabilizes the rotor disc. The aircraft was powered by a 165 horsepower Franklin engine with a covered fuselage and an open cockpit. The success of the test flight strengthened Larry Bell's commitment to the helicopter. Excessive vibrations led to the loss of the prototype during landing tests, but Bell's engineers continued to modify and improve on Young's design. Young's design continued to evolve, and test pilot Floyd Carlson quickly discovered the unique talents of the helicopter. In 1944, Carlson hovered in the experimental aircraft in front of a bemused crowd in Buffalo, New York. This was the first indoor helicopter flight in the United States. Carlson had only one complaint that day. Apparently, he had a difficult time navigating the aircraft due to the enormous amount of dust circulating inside the building, and the spotlight operator's insistence on pointing the blinding light directly at the cockpit. While nobody on the developing team particularly enjoyed these demonstrations, they all knew the vast importance of public support for new aviation technology. The following year, Carlson gave the world 2 impromptu presentations of the helicopter's potential. In the first, Carlson flew a doctor to a snowed-in farmhouse in western New York, where a pilot lay injured following ejection from a damaged airplane. Carlson's other adventure, in which he rescued 2 men from a crumbling ice floe in Lake Erie, further demonstrated the helicopter's unique ability to perform tasks that planes, and in this case, boats, could not. Carlson's Lake Erie rescue mission earned him the Treasury Department Silver Medal and provided the Bell Company with great publicity for its helicopter development. The first officially designated Model 47 took to the air on the 8th of December 1945, and within 3 months, the first Federal Aviation Administration type-approved certificate was issued for this model. It was the first ever awarded to a commercial helicopter. Orders began to pour in for commercial and military contracts, and production of the Model 47 began in late 1946. This marks the start of a legacy which continued through 27 years, 20 different models, and more than 5,000 aircraft. The development of the aircraft cost Bell $12 million, and the Model 47 emerged as the Bell Company's Model T, pushing the company to the forefront of helicopter development and manufacturing. Larry Bell was determined to integrate the helicopter into the commercial world, and he sent teams of employees with Model 47s to demonstrate its uses in a variety of industries. With these new models, the cabin of the older model was replaced with the now familiar goldfish bowl plexiglass bubble. Bell's efforts did open the door to commercial acceptance of the helicopter, and world events ensured the military would also learn of the Model 47's talents. Bell Model 47D, the first Bell helicopter mass-produced for military use, was developed in 1947. 3 years later, the Korean War gave the Model 47 a new opportunity to demonstrate its capabilities. The bitter cold of the Korean winter took its toll on the troops and on their vehicles. Fixed-wing aircraft could not land in many remote areas, and the Army began to integrate helicopters into their logistical strategy. The Model 47 quickly found its niche as an air ambulance, and its success in this role revolutionized the evacuation of wounded soldiers. The Model 47 could land virtually anywhere, and fitted with stretchers on each side, could carry a medic and 2 wounded soldiers directly to MASH units. More than 2,400 Model 47s served in the military forces throughout the world, and in the commercial sphere, more than 2,600 Model 47s made their way into a remarkable variety of uses. The success of the Model 47 gave Bell the finances to develop other models. In 1954, Bell engineers designed Model 204 to fit the U.S. Army specification for a military helicopter needed for casualty evacuation, troop transport, and pilot training. The Army specifications call for the ability to lift an 800-pound load over a mission radius of 115 miles, and the requirement that the helicopter be easy to maintain in the field. The prototype of Bell's Model 204, the YH-40, won the U.S. Army design competition in June of 1955. This prototype first flew on October 22, 1956, and the military granted authorization for 6 more pre-service trials, and for several immediate adjustments to be made to the design. In August 1958, 6 YH-40s were delivered to the Army for evaluation. These YH-40s had a cabin that was about a foot longer than the prototype. In addition, these choppers had been fitted with 4-inch high landing skids, a wider access door, an engine that was mounted on the cabin roof, and could run on all main fuel types, plus the ability to fly 1,000 hours before needing a mechanical overhaul. The cabin could accommodate 2 crewmen and 8 troops. The Army took these aircraft and put them through a variety of intensive tests in a number of severe environments. This model made it to Canada and later Alaska, where it was forced to endure temperatures as low as minus 65 degrees. The helicopter was further tested in more severe icing conditions for an extended period of time. The net result of this cold weather testing was that the YH-40 was capable of operating even in extremely cold weather. Other models were taken to the desert in Arizona, where they were forced to endure extreme heat and massive dust intake. The purpose of these tests was to see if the YH-40 was capable of performing with optimum efficiency under simulated battle conditions. The Army also tested the helicopter's tactical capabilities for troop transport, medical evacuation, and both internal and external cargo transport. The YH-40 incorporated a single 3,000-pound capacity external cargo suspension system. The system was attached at the aircraft's center of gravity, which provided improved stability while moving external cargo. Here, the YH-40 easily lifts an L-19 airplane, which weighed just under 2,000 pounds. Pleased with the Bell helicopters, the Army ordered 9 HU-1s. 2 months later, in September of 1958, the first HU-1 left Bell's Texas plant, and a year later, orders for the aircraft exceeded 100. The Army designated the helicopter the AH-1 Iroquois, a name which never took off. Instead, the aircraft became universally known as the Huey. Even when the military designation for utility helicopters changed to UH in 1962, the name Huey did not. Before 1960, few Americans were familiar with the wet terrain and harsh jungle climate of a small coastal country in Southeast Asia. Yet, within the next decade, 2.6 million Americans would serve in the jungles and wetlands of Vietnam, and more than 60,000 would not survive the brutality. The Vietnam War was the longest war in American history. The average age of an American soldier walking through the challenging lands of Vietnam was 19 years. In the Second World War, the average age was 26. The soldier in Vietnam often fought guerrilla warfare, not always knowing who his enemy was or where he came from. Much of the traditional American military equipment was not suited for the unpredictable landscapes of Southeast Asia, and new technologies had to be rapidly mastered. All of these factors, along with the special personalities of those who served, contribute to the great mystery of this war. A look at the Vietnam War from the cockpit of a Huey might shed some light on the matter. American involvement in Vietnam began as an advisory role. The United States would help the South Vietnamese defend their freedom. But as the possibility of North Vietnamese victory increased, full-scale military operations were implemented, and more American supplies, in particular aircraft, made their way over to Vietnam. Throughout the war, the U.S. worked desperately to slow the infiltration of supplies and soldiers making their way south. Initially, it was believed that massive airstrikes in the north would accomplish this task, while simultaneously making Hanoi pay, and eventually force the North Vietnamese to the negotiating table. These airstrikes, however, had little effect on halting the North Vietnamese supply lines, and gradually American ground troops were committed to the campaign. Soon, more and more American men found themselves in the unfamiliar environment of Southeast Asia, an environment that puzzled American military strategists. The lands of Vietnam are wet and fertile, with marshes and dense foliage dominating the terrain. During the time of the war, very few modern roads and bridges existed. These conditions proved to be a challenge to the American military. Moving trucks, troops, tanks, and other supplies across such terrain was new to the Pentagon. Through trial and error, new methods of warfare were developed, and at the heart of these approaches was the helicopter. The first American helicopters to serve in Vietnam were the Piasecki H-1 Shawnee tandem rotor helicopters, often called the Flying Bananas. These underpowered and unarmed aircraft suffered serious losses, prompting some American advisors to suggest that an escort might be needed. In 1962, the first Hueys arrived in Vietnam, and soon they began escorting the H-1. This first unit of 15 Hueys came under the designation of the Utility Tactical Transport Helicopter Company. The Hueys were armed with 2.75-inch rockets mounted 8 to a side. 2 Browning 30mm air-cooled machine guns were mounted on the skids, and they were fed from ammunition boxes stored inside the cargo department. The standard method of approach for the H-1 involves staggering their formations and flying approximately 1 minute apart. Once on the ground, the H-1s unloaded their troops as fast as possible and then immediately flew out. It was while the troop carriers were on the ground that they were most vulnerable. For 6 months, beginning in October of 1962, the U.S. Army evaluated the Huey's performance as an escort. It was determined that it was the last phase of an escort role. The approach phase was where the armed helicopters proved most valuable. The suppressive fire delivered by the Hueys was highly effective in reducing the amount and effectiveness of enemy fire against the transport helicopters. In the first 5 months of combat flying, only one gunship Huey was shot down, and the loss of H-21s dropped 25%. These early successes endeared the Hueys to pilots and ground troops alike. Their suppressive firepower was an effective tool against the crafty Viet Cong, and the maintenance required was usually minimal. The Huey's engine was designed to need an overhaul after 1,000 hours flying, or approximately every 125,000 miles traveled. This low maintenance requirement was unprecedented for helicopter service. Changing the turbine engines could be performed in a matter of minutes, without having to drain the fuel or rewire the electrical system. A portable hoist system was developed, making field repairs to the Huey no problem at all. The Huey engine also had the special feature of being able to run on a variety of different types of fuels. This feature would prove to be significant in combat when supplies were a regular problem. These early successes of the Huey pleased the Bell Aircraft Company, but as performance reports made their way from Southeast Asia, Bell knew modifications to the aircraft were needed to make the Huey better suited for the escort role. The most significant modification toward this end was the installation of the XM-6 Emerson Quad system. These flex guns were controlled by the co-pilot through a special sight device mounted on top of the cabin. They were fed by a dozen 500-round ammunition boxes mounted on the rear cabin floor. A Huey armed with flex guns was capable of firing at targets not directly in the flight path of the helicopter. Though these modifications were vast improvements, it became increasingly difficult for a Huey to slug it out with an entrenched hostile force. Further improvements to the aircraft, and more importantly to their strategic capabilities, became imperative. New strategies called for new hardware, and Bell's continual upgrading brought the UH-1D into service in 1963. With a rotor diameter increased to 48 feet and a chord of 21 inches, these aircraft could carry nearly double the basic Huey payload. The UH-1D could carry up to 14 passengers, or 4,000 pounds of freight. More than 1,000 UH-1Ds ultimately became the backbone of the Army's battlefield support helicopter force. While Huey gunships proved their merit, simultaneously the aircraft found itself in other roles, none more important than as a Dustoff helicopter. Known by their radio call sign, Dustoff, these Hueys, flown by the United States Army Medical Corps, performed their missions with extraordinary skill, bravery, and efficiency. Driven by a goal of getting wounded soldiers out within 15 minutes, these unarmed air ambulances evacuated wounded without regard to service or nationality. The familiar sound and sight of a Dustoff Huey took on an angelic form for wounded and stranded soldiers, confident the motto of the Dustoffs, "Not without your wounded," ensured their rescue. More than 97% of the wounded picked up in the field survived, a testament to the bravery of the pilots and the success of the Huey. As American involvement in Vietnam quickly escalated, the versatility of the Huey pushed the helicopter into service with all four branches of the American military.
This is Bluebird 3-0.
Large cargo dump to position X-ray Romeo 7386.
Request surface units investigate.
Bluebird 3-0, this is Clean-Cut, roger out. Suspicious contact report, sir. Very well, thank you.
In late 1965, the United States Navy was given the task of patrolling the 2,500-mile network of canals and streams which made up the Mekong River Delta. Operation Game Warden was designed to try and stem the flow of enemy supplies into South Vietnam. The maze of waterways of the Mekong River Delta remained a fertile avenue for enemy activity, even in the face of the Navy's deployment of armed patrol boats. The Navy immediately recognized the need for helicopter gunship support and initially borrowed several Huey gunships from the Army. The first of these aircraft reached the Navy in March 1966, and in April of 1967, the operations were consolidated into the Helicopter Attack Light Squadron 3. This group adopted the nickname Seawolves, and they got the maximum performance out of the Hueys. The success of the two-pronged Seawolf mission, direct support of armed patrol boats, and armed patrol of the river delta areas remains another unique chapter in the remarkable legacy of the Huey. The Huey had ushered in a new role for the helicopter and continued to serve as a gunship throughout the war. Its ability to adapt to countless missions ensured it would remain the essential aircraft in the country. By 1967, the United States was fully engaged in a helicopter war. At any time in the following 4 years, as many as 2,000 helicopters could be found in the skies over Vietnam. Although the Huey was performing admirably, thriving in nearly every role it was thrust into, by the summer of 1966, it was clear a new gunship was needed. Formally engaged in an escalating conflict, America's most heavily armed gunship was still, in reality, a modified utility helicopter. The need for helicopter gunships was critical, and when the UH-1's heir apparent debuted in 1968, it offered resounding proof that the Huey gunship had changed the face of war. The Bell AH-1 Huey Cobra was the first gunship designed as such from day one. Its awesome firepower and tremendous speed gave the world a peek at the future of attack helicopters. The Cobra's speed advantage allowed it to race ahead and prepare the chosen location for a landing party. Once the Cobras reached the destination, their weapons were shot from various directions, suppressing the enemy's fire from the ground. This barrage continued during actual landing, but only after another Cobra laid a screen of smoke, providing an extra margin of safety. Once troops were on the ground, the Cobra's mission changed to direct fire support. Enemy positions were determined by the ground commander, who was in direct contact with the Cobra fire team leader. The Cobra's accurate shooting permitted the ground leader to direct fire only meters from his own position. Another important element of the Cobra was its rocket artillery. Each Cobra was armed with over a ton of ordnance, which were shot from two 19-shot rocket pods, located on each side of the aircraft. The Cobra had as much firepower as a 38-round howitzer barrage. The Cobra did have its problems. Though designed to have air conditioning, many of the Cobras never were equipped with a desperately needed cooling system. This problem was further complicated by the enormous plexiglass windshield that, in the hot, humid weather of Vietnam, acted like a greenhouse, leaving the pilot and co-pilot working in miserable conditions. Unlike the earlier Hueys, The Cobras could handle only 2 passengers. There were no cargo holds, no benches, no big door on the side. Consequently, if a Cobra came across troops that needed to be airlifted to safety, it could not comply. These problems did not, however, prevent the aircraft from accomplishing the task it had been designed to do. The Cobra had successfully demonstrated the practical use of a gunship in combat. An attack helicopter with a powerful engine, great maneuverability, and awesome firepower was now a key element in contemporary warfare. Anticipating such developments, Lockheed designed and built the AH-56 Cheyenne. In 1966, the Cheyenne won a U.S. Army Advanced Aerial Fire Support competition. The Army immediately ordered 10 aircraft for a series of extensive tests. The Cheyenne used the Lockheed rigid rotor system and had a pusher rotor on the tail for high-speed level flight. The short stubbed wings provided lift for high forward speed. During forward flight, most of the engine's power drove the rear pusher rotor. Only 25% of the power went to the main rotor. The Cheyenne was capable of achieving an impressive 240 miles per hour, and its ability to fly fast and low was unprecedented for its time. The heart of the Cheyenne firepower was the new TOW wire-guided anti-tank missile system. The Cheyenne carried 6 TOW missiles. It also had a 7.62 millimeter minigun and a 30 millimeter anti-tank cannon. The flexible weapons system was computer-assisted and used both laser and Doppler radar technology. The weapons system was capable of locking on its target throughout the entire engagement, regardless of the helicopter's position. The tandem seating arrangement, with a huge canopy, provided superb visibility to the pilot and gunner. The pilot could fire at any target he could see. He just had to aim with his helmet sight, select his weapon, and then shoot. The rocket system was very accurate, and the aircraft's ability to approach at low altitudes at high speed helped prevent unnecessary exposure to enemy fire. Inspired by the continued successes of the Huey and the Cobra, Lockheed worked diligently to move the Cheyenne from the development stage into production. Unfortunately, substantial cost overruns led to the cancellation of the project in 1972. But the Cheyenne's history is important because it confirmed the military's permanent commitment to the attack helicopter, a significant advancement in military strategy that began with the Huey. The Huey aircraft, and later its offspring, the Cobra, became an integral part in the lives of every soldier who served in Vietnam. The distinctive sound of the rotor blades indicated that in one way or another, help was above you and on the way. The Huey was a consistent friend upon whom someone could always depend. In a war as complicated as Vietnam, finding a friend was often difficult. As the war came to an end, a dark cloud of anger and confusion settled over the United States. Americans had trouble reconciling their emotions about why and how the war was fought. Veterans returned home from the sheer brutality of the war to find a public so bitterly divided that they forgot their sons and daughters had died for their country. The healing of the wounds from the Vietnam War continues to this day. Many still search for their own road to reconcile their feelings about Southeast Asia, as more and more Americans remain ignorant of the complexity of the Vietnam era. The soldiers who did survive their tours of duty returned home to a nation ripped apart by the agony and confusion over the motives and nature of the war. Almost 30 years later, most Americans still have trouble sorting out their emotions about the war. Vietnam veterans all across the country often come together, driven to bond with fellow veterans living and gone, determined to ensure their sacrifice is not forgotten. In Baltimore, Maryland, a group of Vietnam veterans decided to rescue and restore an old friend.
When I first saw it, I saw a photograph in the newspaper. And I came down to the chapter. I've been a member of Vietnam Veterans at Large, and saw the newspaper, read the article, came down and looked at her. And I'll be honest, Jack, I told you at the beginning, well, do we really want to do this? She's in pretty bad shape. She's been pretty well beat up over the years. Martin's Aviation Museum got her first, got her down to Martin's, and then we got her from Martin Aviation. Brought her here. That photograph of them bringing it into here was what got my interest, got me involved. It's when I met Jack.
Starting at the planning stage, we had to do our homework and getting part numbers and contacting people trying to find parts so we could refit her, and getting in contact with people who could help us out.
We located a lot of parts through the internet. I'm a member of the Vietnam Helicopter Flight Crew Network on the internet. It's a bunch of pilots, co-pilots, crew chiefs, gunners. Let them know what we were doing and asked for their help, basically. Started looking for parts. We got parts from all across the country, as far away as California. Sometimes no more than a phone call, hey, we need this part. Yeah, sure, we'll send it out.
It was kind of nice to have a Christmas package come in June. Be sitting home after a day at work and a UPS truck pull up and out comes this box and the man comes running over to you and you sign for it and you open it up and it's a gauge or it's a panel or it's a bracket or a light. It was fantastic to have so much support across the United States to find parts for this young lady. In this particular aircraft as a gunship, we would have a pilot sitting in the forward right seat, an aircraft commander sitting in the left front seat. Right here at this station would be your best buddy, your gunner, because he took care of the weapon system. But of course, the crew chief sat on the right side, or excuse me, the left side of the aircraft to watch the tail rotor, and that was a very important part of the helicopter. We were a team. We basically ate, slept together. We spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, working and living together.
These are all the instruments that the pilots and co-pilot use to fly the aircraft. These are all the control panels. Some of these instruments and gauges were here. A lot of them weren't. We got parts from, as we said before, far away as California. A gentleman out in Long Beach at the Dark Horse Army Aviation Museum contributed quite a few parts to us. Gave us a big hand. This helicopter is probably, at this point, about 85% complete. We dedicated the helicopter on November 9th, and it was a day full of emotion. It was a culmination for us, for Jack and I, of a lot of work and a lot of emotions and feelings went into it.
We had over 300 people come to share that day with us, all around the United States, from privates to major generals.
It brought back a lot of memories. It stirred memories. We talked about a lot of things. I think it was a healing process for everybody who was involved. You could do something to a helicopter and talk about something that related, something that happened in Vietnam or happened in Laos, where I did most of my flying, and be able to relate and to express emotions and feelings and thoughts and concerns that you hadn't been able to talk about for 30 years.
It was closure for me of a period of time that I'd tried to put away for 30 years. And I have not slept so well since the day it was dedicated. Seeing little guys' faces that I remembered so long, long ago, and being able to work on this helicopter and see, you know, something would happen as you're working on a helicopter and see that particular face as he's walking by your bird and you're working on a helicopter, the conversation you had. It was the most emotional day that day.
We unveiled her during the ceremony, and you could hear the reaction from the people, and we knew we'd done good. We were nervous, we were worried about it. Did we get it right? Is everything going to be okay? Are we missing something? You know, is somebody going to be disappointed because something isn't quite there? Everything was positive. A beautiful day. This is a symbol of that war, but it's not to glorify the war. It's a reminder that in war people die, and that we do these things as a remembrance of their sacrifice and what it meant, so that we don't do it again, that we find a way to avoid repeating it.
From August of 1964, when the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution gave President Lyndon Baines Johnson license to prosecute the Vietnam War using American blood and treasure, until April of 1975, some 2.7 million Americans served in Southeast Asia.
But a deliberately planned fighter sweep went just as we'd hoped. The MiGs came up, the MiGs were aggressive, we tangled, they lost. "58,000 of them never returned. Those that did return found themselves in a country very different from the one that sent them off to war. Vietnam veterans came home to a nation that did not wholly comprehend where they had been or why, let alone what they had seen and experienced. But there, in country as they say, Vietnam veterans found something else, a brotherhood. It was one thing on which they knew they could bet their lives, the sacred bond Vietnam veterans had with one another. That bond never has been and never will be broken. So when the veterans returned home to a nation that was at best indifferent and at worst contemptuous, they continued to rely on each other. Vietnam veterans adopted a unique custom. Upon meeting a fellow veteran here in the States, they offered the sincere greeting they never got from the press, politicians, or, quite frankly, the public. Welcome home. It is a custom they still practice to this day. In this new series, Dronescapes offers Welcome Home, the stories of Vietnam veterans in their own words.
target. Hit it, hit it.
You ain't gonna believe this. Christmas of 1966, we had an operation going. We were at Benoit, okay, and if your geography is general, southeast of there is Vung Tau, and we had a road going up through Vung Tau, and we had an operation down there, and we put a battalion in to an outfit we called LZ Stump just before Christmas, and we had to get them out by Christmas because there was we declared a lull in fighting and we're supposed to come out of the field, and that was probably the hottest operation that we had that year. I flew with a guy named Dick Albrecht, and Dick had a little tape recorder, and he put the earphone under his helmet and plugged it into the microphone. And I have a tape that where we took those people in and brought them out under rather heavy fire during that operation, and you can hear all three channels working and the guns going and the rockets going out.
The zone was out in the middle of the boondocks, and it was quite steep to get into and out of, with trees about 150 feet on each side.
Still be bad news.
The smoke from the artillery and the airstrikes was all over it, almost IFR, so to speak.
Roger, have they stopped the artillery fire yet? I've seen negative red and haven't been advised of it being stopped. Oh, they're still firing. I see it now.
The whining sound is one of the weapon systems that you hear coming through into the tape recorder. It's a 40 millimeter system there. We're waiting now for the artillery and air, for the artillery to start firing on the landing zone so that the slicks can come in. The slicks being the ships that bring in the troops. This morning the artillery lasted 2.5 minutes longer than it was supposed to, and then the gunships that my platoon were supposed to come in for a 4-minute preparation. And you'll hear as the record goes on that the artillery lasted 2.5 minutes into our preparation, and we didn't quite get everything done. Although
Okay, being on the bark this morning, we're going to do it the same way we did yesterday. I'll tell you to get it ready, pull the pins, and let the handle flip, and then throw it.
the mark is the smoke grenades that we throw out that we drop into the landing zone while the ships with the troops on them are still a minute or two out, so they can see just exactly where to sit down inside the smoke. When we hit the right zone, it's a real good thing, but when we hit the wrong zone, we kind of mess them up.
It's still going. At the left. Going to 8-0.
Going to 8-0 means when they take off with their troops on board, they fly slower So I say they climb out slower after they pick the troops up, and then when they get to altitude and everybody gets in formation, they take off, and he says going to 80 means the speed, 80 knots. You can hear the rotor blades in the distance background here.
He's pretty goddamn close. He's only 2 minutes off now.
You'll have to excuse a little bit of the language.
Go on in, 88, hit it, I'll follow you. Roger. We'll be braking right. Roger, right brake.
Some of the transmissions you'll hear very faint in the distance. You won't be able to make them out. We haven't gotten our technique down to taping all this stuff just right.
We're about 3 minutes out. Yeah, we're going to prepare one pass. The second pass will be the marking pass. Yeah, okay, man. I got it.
That sound you just heard was the one and only rocket that came out of my tubes then. We had some difficulty. And that choo-choo sound is the 40 millimeter kicking off. And the machine gun's coming in now.
Check my circuit breakers. I don't have any rockets. 88, this 86, I'm cutting in front of you. Come on around and cover me for the mark. Roger. 87, you follow 88 in. Roger. Cavalry, I'm about 45 seconds from mark. Do you have the red smoke in sight? Roger. Now, if you have 45 seconds, we're on final now. 87, take your fire team and cover the flight. Get the smoke ready, get the smoke ready. Okay, drop the smoke, drop the smoke. So I can break off. Come on, H, you got 120-foot dead crank right in the middle of it. Let's break off, go pick up the other flight. That's true. Yes. Featherweight. If we get the joint, featherweight, go right out. Or receive fire. Right hand. Right hand side. Get me lined up on a babes. All right, don't shoot till you see it. You will not fire. We're coming over the zone at this time now. Welcome. All right, hit it. That's good. Okay, cover him going out. Jump 4. 6 on the right side, 87. Rules of engagement only. About receiving fire, we couldn't reach us. Jump 3 and 2 receive fire left and the right of the LZ, about 100 meters out. Roger, 100 meters out. 87, you have this flight at this time. We're going to stay over the zone. Yes, sir, Roger. Okay, just got him on the right, 87.
This getting them on the right and getting them on the left means that he has a fire team, which is 2 ships, and one of them covers the right side of the formation, the other one covers the left side of the formation. So you'll hear people telling each other whose side they have. And the brake is when you go in and hit something, which way you turn is a brake.
And I'll be at altitude over you. Please, 57. 80. 450. remember there's been one smoke screen, that was it.
This 1 and 2 flights, the zone was quite small, and we were taking 10 ships in, so you had to take 5 in at a time. So we had 2 different elements going into the zone. And like I say, the wind wasn't blowing too awfully much, so all the artillery and the airstrikes that had come in there had left that place so smoky that it was very hard to see. And what we haven't heard was...
Get a hold of somebody, if they've lost a tail bomb, you have to get a hold of somebody to swing it out.
The talk that you hear right there was that the number 5 ship in the first flight that went in hit a tree. As he was getting into the zone, all got out of it, and he kept it upright, but they had to replace the tail rotor and a tail rotor gearbox. They flew it out about 3 hours later while things were still going on.
Wait a minute. Be sure you know where that other gun is. Bring it around hard, man. Get me lined up on it.
The second flight was just taken off out of the zone, and they got fire also from the ground, and that's what you hear, line me up on it. The weapon systems have a certain degree of flexibility right and left and up and down, and you got to turn the ship in so that you can line guns up on them. We're usually doing circles about them. While they're going into the zone, they're slowing up, we're doing circles around them to try to cover them. In case they receive fire, they throw white smoke, and then we hit the area in which the white smoke has fallen into. And we've also got after the lifts start going, you get more people into the landing zone, which is the Lima Zulu. You have to watch out for the friendlies on the ground. That's why you hear...
Yeah, I know we're going to do that. I don't want to wait till the second flight comes in, though. They got 6 going. I want to see what they got. You still got some 40 to cover them. Right. They come in that second time, then we'll head out with one of the fire teams. No problem.
The limited fuel on these ships.
Yeah.
We try to keep a lot of fuel on board for emergencies, and while the flight's going on, we try to get refueled between the time they get at the pickup zone, which is the PZ, and the landing zone, which is the LZ. And we try to keep gun cover on them all the time. In fact, it's mandatory.
7, this is 86. When you come out after the next drop-off, you'll head for Lark, immediately refuel and rearm. 8-1, you'll refuel, rearm after 8-7 when he'll call you when he's off. Roger. That'll necessitate orbiting over this area here. Well, Ben, what's wrong with my rockets? I got 1 rocket out. I don't have another rocket. We got all the connections on, fine. Yes, sir. Well, something's wrong with us. Don't leave it fires out of your fire.
Rules of engagement means that you must be fired at and identify the man firing at you or the area firing at you by flashes or by seeing a person before you can fire back.
Well, I hope it didn't hurt them boys down there. Don't guess it did.
That's speaking of the ship that knocked the tail rotor off, and no one was hurt.
Went through that mighty quick. Gunfire received by Bravo flight going out of the Lima Zulu, approximately 1 to 200 meters west of the LZ. Current situation, we have 1 ship is down in the Lima Zulu with tail rotor problems. We have a maintenance ship there. Over.
So that's what we call a CA, a combat assault mission, and like I say, it was an interesting one of the more interesting ones we've had in some time, and actually it's quite good to get in on because we haven't had a great deal of contact since I've been here, and you get complacent, you know. You get complacent in your when you're flying the lift ships and everything, and you also get complacent when we're flying these gunships covering these people, and we tend sometimes maybe to not get in the best of positions by sloughing off and not being alert all the time. It takes one of these good things to keep us in the proper perspective over here.
Born in Cowan, Tennessee, 15 October 36. Local school, Sewanee Military Academy, high school. in Sewanee, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, 1958. We have there's two sons. Both of us are military. My brother went Naval Academy, and I came here, and he retired Air Force, and I retired Army. I kind of thought I wanted to be an engineer, and at that time, I believed that Georgia Tech was the best opportunity close by. And when I got to Tech, it was obvious it was going to be a hard run. And I found out that I could go to ROTC, which was mandatory at that time at Tech for the first 2 years if you were physically able for it. So I figured those hours in military, in ROTC, would be A's, and I'd need them. And then when I got through the first 2 years, I still enjoyed it and continued it. Well, you know, ROTC, you have a summer between junior and senior year, 6 weeks, and then if you finish the thing, you become a second lieutenant, and you have an obligation. At that time was 58. The obligation was 2 years, and if you took a regular Army commission, it was 3 years. So I had that obligation right out of school. When I was finishing my junior year at Georgia Tech, our instructor said, we're going to have a flight program, ROTC flight program, next year, which would have been my senior year, or was. And I volunteered for it. That summer I took the physical, I got it. And so during my senior year out here at Charlie Brown in Atlanta, I got 40 hours of ground school and 40 hours in a J3 Cub and got my license to fly, the obligation for which I was obligated to ask for flight school when I went in the Army. And I did, and I went through basic airborne ranger and went straight to flight school.
Here the fledgling pilot will learn how a helicopter actually works in the new TH-55 trainer. It's a standard commercial model, unmodified or off the shelf. Basically, all copter controls are the same. Move this gizmo up to go up, down to go down. The stick in your right hand controls movement to the sides, forward or backward. The pedals are for keeping the copter headed where you want it headed.
From there, out of flight school, now I flew that Hiller we were talking about, basic, and then I flew the Piasecki H-21, tandem rotor job that looks like a flying banana, old machine. We went to Korea, where my unit only had the Bell, like you see in MASH, and Sikorsky early model called the H-19. So I spent a year there, and while there, one of the officers in 60 was going home, and I asked him what he was going to do, and he told me he was going to Fort Bragg to a Special Forces thing, and then to Vietnam. And I said, where's that? So you want to know what's going on? That's when I first really became conscious that we had a little thing going in Vietnam. I was down at Fort Rucker after Korea, and they came by looking for a few people to go to Vietnam to instruct the Vietnamese in flying the Sikorsky H-34. And I wasn't qualified in it, so I didn't get to go. And so I had some time in a unit down there that basically armed our own helicopters. Then I had a year and a half in France and a year in Germany. And while I was over in Germany, I again asked to go to Vietnam. So when I finished that German thing in December of '63, I came home for 2 weeks leave and reported into Vietnam in about the 20th of January of 1964.
And you requested it because you were a career guy and that's where the war was, or what made you want to go to Vietnam?
Well, if you're trained to do something and you're paid to be able to do it, it's a shame to hide from it. So that seemed like the thing to do. Out on the West Coast, they had a DC-6 Overseas National Airways, a little bitty a side thing. I had my helmet bag, and in that helmet bag, I had a 357, a 5-shot air weight 38, and my air weight 45, and some ammunition. I didn't know how I was going to get there or what I was going to find. And when I walked up the steps, the stewardess was there, and I told her what I had in my bag, and she said, "Put it under your seat. We don't want it to fall out and hurt someone." I got to Vietnam. They told me where I was going, and I flew in, and here you are, and we'll be checking you out. And there was the UH-1Bs that I was well qualified in. What did I find there? At that time, in 1968, we had about 5 or 6 aviation companies, I think. And we had 2 of them north of Saigon, one at Quy Nhon and one at Pleiku. And we supported the Vietnamese. And we took them out on operations. We had people who were advisors out there with them. We resupplied them. Actually, we medevaced them at that time. The medevac wasn't well established. And we took people out to the villages, medical people, psychological warfare people, whatever we were told to do, that's how we got them out there.
Do you remember your first mission?
Not really. In 1964, I never had a really hot mission in 1964 because we just didn't have any big battles in '64. I've got notes for the first 7 months on what we did every day, a little bitty paragraph. And you flew, if you were doing administrative stuff, you went up above 1,500 feet, which probably would give you the best chance of not being hit by small arms. And sometimes we flew 1 pilot missions then. As far as medevac goes in '64, when we went, first off, you got to know that in the UH-1s we had 3 basic radios. You had a UHF, and that was kind of Air Force, and a VHF, which was kind of Army, and then FM, which is what people on the ground would communicate with you. And in '64, when we flew from one point to the other, we set our FM radios on 37.0, and everyone who was on the ground as a Special Forces, and I hadn't mentioned Special Forces, but there were a lot of Special Forces camps that we supplied in '64 and helped do whatever they wanted us to do. And so they knew that we were on 37.0 if they saw a UH-1 coming over, and the advisors on the ground knew that also. So you may be flying and you hear somebody call in and say, helicopter in the vicinity of Chita Rio flying southeast, this is so-and-so. And you'd answer them, and it might be a Special Forces camp who wanted someone to go to their major headquarters in the train, which was where you were angling, and they'd ask you if you had room for one, come down, or they'd call in and say if they had a medevac that needed to go to a certain place. In a case like that, then what we did was circle over, and they'd say we're going to pop smoke, and if they throw out a grenade, then we would identify the color to keep the bad guys on the frequency from throwing a smoke that might be a different color. So those were just some of the jobs that we did, and whatever they wanted. I was assigned to an aviation company called the Cowboys. At that time it was A Company of the 82nd, but they renamed it. And we were attached to the 173rd Airborne in Benoit. And our operational area was 3 Corps. It is the northern part of South Vietnam, down to probably Quang Ngai, and then from Quang Ngai on down to below Ban Me Tuot was 2 Corps, and that included over at Nha Trang and Phan Thiet, I think. And then 3 Corps went on down to about the river, down at maybe, it was north of My Tho, Vinh Long, probably there. And then the south of Vinh Long down, the rest of it is 4 Corps down there. In that tour, we supported the 173rd, and we did whatever they wanted us to do, the combat assaults, taking them in, pulling them out, resupplying. We also had missions for long-range patrols that were down in the area where we took people in, and some of the guys sometimes had to get them out in a hurry by throwing out ropes down through the trees and pulling them up. I never was on that, because in an aviation company in Vietnam, you had 3 platoons, 8 helicopters per platoon, and 2 of them were what we called slicks. They had a machine gun on each side, but they took troops and supplies. And then there was a platoon of 8 helicopters that were armed helicopters.
We had several lifts today, about 16 lifts, and we divided the flight into Alpha and Bravo flights, so you'll hear us trying to cover 2 flights going into one landing zone that's kind of hard to get in and out of. We got to go in and pick them up in a tangle of brush and bring them out of the place out through the trees. Again, 2-5 is a control ship, and you hear them, the numbers 8-1, 8-3, 8-4, 8-7, 8-6, and 8-8. They're the gunships from my platoon.
He called that a left orbit?
And the orbit is the way we fly around the slicks once they get to the ground.
Go ahead. All of it. All it left. Hit the
smoke. Again, when the slicks get fired at, they throw smoke and we shoot at the smoke. So that's what that was about there.
Sharks 8 and 9 received fire showing the LZ smoke rocks on that spot. Roger, we got it. We'll hit it again on the way around. Roger, watch friendlies.
And the choo-choo chunk noise would be the 40 millimeter. And the noise that goes choo, choo, that'll be the rockets moving out on the machine. And of course you can hear the machine gun.
Roger, 8-6 is the automatic weapon star that time. Shit, I must have saw about 30 of them coming right up over on this side. You see them already? Yes, sir. There's fire again. Hit it, hit it. the 40 millimeter. Advise that there's nobody on the south of the west half of the LZ, over. But I tried to feed it through my hand and halfway another way. Keep flying. Who'll be in position as the press. Roger, you lead. I want to put one right up there in the corner. Bravo, flight on final. Roger. We'll start our pass now. We're breaking left, 87. You got it. We'll be in your orbit after you, behind you. There's 87. Coming in. 88 is way back too far. We got maybe one pair, but we got to stay up here another round or two now. I can set down into Lima Zulu as soon as they leave and take care of that 40. Perfect idea. 9625, UH-1. 96 go. Roger, be advised, we haven't returned to Rocky Zero. Recommend that the left continue as progressing. Unless we're receiving severe ground fire again, we have fighters on aircraft at this time, and if the situation should arrive, is hold the flight and use the air, over. This is 9 or 6. That's affirmative. Unless we get something real big, we're not going to have another long delay like we had before. 8-1, this is 8-6. Go ahead. How much fuel do you have on board? As you were. Armament? Roger. We got you. Roger, I got about 50% on the rockets and 40% on the 40 millimeter. Roger. Roger, can you keep that up if you only use machine guns and occasional rocket and occasional 40 millimeter? This is 8-6. We'll manage to keep at least 3 on station at all times. 9-6-5, UH-1. Roger, that's a fine job that time. Charlie 36 set up. Roger, the second half of line item 1-7, what's your armament status? Roger, y'all head back at this time and refuel and see if you can get that stuff fixed.
They had, at that time, we had no miniguns at that time. We had 2 machine guns on each side and rocket pods of various sizes, and sometimes we have a 40 millimeter gun sitting out on the front of it.
How would you explain to someone who doesn't understand the terrain and all the things you were dealing with over there, how would you explain to them why the helicopter was, I mean, to this day, the sound of a Huey blade is almost the audio brand of Vietnam. How do you explain to people why those helicopters were so important?
I think all you have to do is look at the statistics, medical statistics of the wars and conflicts before the helicopter and look at them after the helicopter. That, from the viewpoint, I believe, of the ground pounders, the actual combat people out there on the ground. They know that what they need is generally going to come or go by way of a helicopter. There were more exciting times. You kind of got the anytime you support Americans, as opposed to supporting another country, regardless of what it is, I think we as Americans feel that we are doing more good, and therefore you could say that was more interesting. I flew guns that whole time, and what we were doing was call out to give support to the troops that needed it. We also flew around at nighttime to try to do a little bit of discovery and interdiction for the things that were moving at night. And you had more Americans there that you're a part of. So it was more interesting, yeah.
Is there any particular mission or missions in those first two tours that stick with you above all else, or a day you'll never forget sort of thing?
I came out of that place for my last tour in June of '70, and up until that time we had no shoulder-fired weapons directed at us. Later, they had some of those. So that was not in our worry system at the time. The 50 calibers would be the most important thing that you're worried about. But I saw very few of those. You can say I spent a lot of time over there, but I really can't sit here and tell you that my time over there was when the worst part was going on. I didn't schedule it, but that's what happened. Now, you've got to understand that when these people who were flying, the gunners and the crew chiefs, were guys who were 18, 19, 20 years old. A lot of them were. And the perspective of a person who had been there or a person who's longer age-wise is different from an 18-year-old who may have never even shot a shotgun when they hear a bullet or two go by. So you're talking to an older guy who'd been there a lot, and somebody who'd been there at the same time with me on those things, who was young, would probably have a different view than I do of how bad it was.
And when did your second tour come to an end?
Well, the Army put out a program for all services. If you extend your tour by 6 months, that they would let you go anywhere you wanted to and pay you a round-trip ticket and give you 30 days that was not chargeable till you leave. So my brother was over there, and he called me up and said, let's do that. And so we extended, and consequently then when I came back from that extension, which was March or April, then I had a new job, and I actually was supposed to stay through the end of '67, but I got Medevac'd out a little early. And so that was my plus on the tour.
So what happened to you that required you to have to be Medevac?
That Hiller I was telling you about, you sit about like this and you fly stick like this, and I took a AK round up through the bottom, right through the controls. Most of it went in the stick and the rest of it went in my hand. And so I got a little free medical attention. I came back to the States and had a little few months there to hang around. Then I went back out to Walters, Texas, and instructed for about a year. And I got back into Vietnam again in June of 1969 and stayed there till the last day of February of 70.
Am I right to assume that you volunteered to go back? You didn't have to go back, or how?
Yeah, but that was a little bit of arguing with management. I've been wanting to get fixed wing rated. I never had been rated in Army fixed wing. And so I called them up and was trying to say I'd like to go to fixed wing school. And the guy who was my assignment man said, the only people getting fixed wing are those we're sending back to Vietnam. And I said, what class number am I going to be in? And he said, no. I said, yep. And he said, okay. And so they gave me fixed wing school, and I went back. So it was a bargain. Cubs and the L-19. Now, I don't know about you and you're a Cub, but if you get in the L-19, that's a powerful and dependable machine. And that's a lot of difference there.
But you went back for your third tour, you went back as a helicopter pilot.
Went right back. Well, I had a staff job in aviation safety for about 5 months. It was the worst part of my Vietnam tour, was sitting at a desk. And then in November, I got a command of a company, and it turned out to be the same company I'd been in '66. We were back then supporting Vietnamese down in the Delta, and 3 Corps. And the real high point of it was the people in the company. It was strange in that you got 52 flight positions, officers and warrants, mostly warrants. And in that company at that time in 1959, I was the only aviator who had previously flown in Vietnam. And when I saw that, you know, I had wonderment. But it was obvious pretty early on that these are great people. Well, I came out and got married, and I went to Florida State University, and I was there for 3 years and 2 sons. And then I went to Leavenworth for Command General Staff, and I came back here to Atlanta and worked in the Recruiting Command, Southeast Region Recruiting Command. And following that, I went over to Forces Command Headquarters, which was here in Atlanta, and worked in personnel in recruiting and retention until I retired in 1982. 24 years and a month. My brother was Air Force, okay? You gotta understand that before 1959, 59 was the first year that the Air Force Academy graduated a class. And before that, about a quarter of the military academy and naval academy could go Air Force. And so he went Air Force. He was over there in Vietnam as about a little over 4 years between Thailand and the thing. When we were there together in '66, he was the forward air controller, air liaison officer, flying L-19s for an outfit called Sigma, which was 3-corps long-range patrols. And he spent a great amount of time as a forward air controller and air liaison officer. Matter of fact, if you want to interview somebody who is as good as you'll find,
That's your brother. That's a very dangerous job that they did. And he did that for all that time he was there?
I think he did that probably for 2.5 years. He started off by teaching pilot training in northern Thailand in a T-28. He flew F-100s sometimes over there. He flew F-4s a little bit. But as far as his FAC-ALO, I'd say he had at least 2 years worth of it. Ed was flying one time, he said, and they were in 3-corps, and he had a patrol that was nip and tuck, trying to find a place to pick them up. And he said he was burning fumes, and he told him he just had to leave, and so he headed down to Lockheed, I think it was. I believe it was the 1st Infantry Division down there, and he knew there was some L-19s. He said he called and got straight in, and he saw those L-19s, and it was sergeant working on one. He said he wheeled this in and pulled it up and yelled at that sergeant and said, "Is it flyable, and does the radio work?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He jumped in that thing with his maps and everything, called the tower, emergency takeoff, back out over the troop. Said when he came in and landed, the tower said, "Sir, the post commander would like to talk to you." And so he said, fill out the books and everything, and they took him over to the post commander, and he reported in, and the colonel said, "Major, you want to tell me about it?" He said, "This is what's happened." And the colonel said, "How did it fly? Did you fill out the book? Come back to see us." So that's good. Army, Air Force, get together.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it
You know, we don't actually know all of the background of the decisions that were being made, but from our lowly position, it would seem that the political decisions didn't allow the military to do what we could have done as far as it goes. But then again, I look back now and I say our presence over there in the South and to some part elsewise is the country of Vietnam is, in my view, leaving the communist 100% shell, and our presence and our effort probably is going to have won those peoples to our way of life. You know, we lost a lot of people over there, but my God, look at some of the cities we got here and how many we're killing every weekend or every year and everything like that. And I think if I'd been lost over there, it'd be a hell of a lot better than being killed down in Atlanta. Some people say that they were treated poorly when it came back. Never did I have anything. No one ever, maybe it's where I'm from. Maybe it's where I was assigned. But I was never spat upon or talked about or put down. And I don't know. Different people carry a load differently. Some people carry it with a bone structure, and some people carry it with their muscles. And them that carry it with their muscles are going to be hurting pretty soon. So where'd you come from? You know, I think there's a lot to be said for who are you?
It's true.
If you were weak when you went, you got a better chance of being fouled up when you come back. Back in 1964, the 3rd day of July, I was in Pleiku, was a operations officer of the 119th Aviation Company. It was a part of the 52nd Infantry, 52nd Battalion, and it was out of Pleiku, Holloway. It was an Air Force base up there, and in 64, Holloway was an old French base. And we got a call 11 o'clock at night or so, and there was a special forces camp west of Khartoum, and I can't pull the name up, but it was being run over. And it was sucked in weather. And our battalion instructor pilot instruments was Ed Misseldine. So the battalion commander called up and he said, we need to get somebody up over the thing to contact them on FM. Air Force could fly up there, but they didn't have FM. So Ed Missildine and I took a UH-1, and there was a radar. I think it was Parrot control, but I wouldn't swear to it. And we took off, and they directed us out over the camp. And just as we got over the camp, we came into a sucker hole that we could see the ground. And it had to be 2 miles across. So we flew over the camp, and we could see some fire going on. And we tried every frequency we could. And we stayed up there until we needed fuel. And then went on back over, they took us back over to a place where we could get fuel at Khartoum, and we didn't get back out there until the next morning when it got a little light and we could go in. We couldn't land because we had no contact with them whatsoever. And when we landed out there that morning, I guess that was the first time I ever seen people laying on the ground. And the interesting thing about it was, when you have a special forces camp, you've got a team out there, and then they're normally surrounded by Nungs, which was a local tribal, and then there's some Vietnamese in the camp and everything. And the first, we were told that the first mortar that came in hit the A-frame right down top of where their team was. And one man was wounded, and they moved him down to the river and put him on a floating barrel, and the other guy stayed out there with him away from the camp. There were no other Americans hit or wounded, but the camp was in a mess. That was 3rd day of July going on to the 4th of July, 1964. But that was one of the hot American things that we had. A interesting flight that I had was flying a day or two before Thanksgiving, flying gun cover on a C-47 that was going around parachuting frozen turkeys to the Special Forces camps. But different things. Those were we did have and I've got a film of us, a place called Habon, Chirio. They had a camp down near there, and they had a flood. And we took the company down there, the 119th, and picked up Vietnamese and brought them out of the flood. But again, that was 64. And you got to understand, I'm an aviator.
Right.
Okay? I wasn't down there under the trees. I was not down there in the rice paddies. So, right up front, when you're talking to somebody, you ought to find out what they did, because that colors how we feel.
How many missions did you fly in those 3.5 tours? Don't know.
Be very sure when you speak of missions that your Army helicopter missions aren't the same as Air Force and Navy missions. I might go out today on 3 different missions, flying 2 or 3 hours on each one, okay, in the Army. Well, those boys in the Navy and the Air Force, generally speaking, if they go out on one and they're doing a lot of refueling and all this and everything, hell, they're flown all day. So Army missions in helicopters can be 30 minutes, 2 hours, or we can go out on one, fly for 12 or 13 hours for the day on the thing. But I say that because we just aren't as a general rule, comparable by mission time, by the time of a mission. There's a young guy named Dominic Fino who, along with 4 or 5 other guys, enlisted in the unit in 69 and 70, have put together a list of several hundred people who have been in that unit. And about every 2 years, of late it's been in Las Vegas because the Golden Nugget puts up with us. And we'll have anywhere from 30 to 60 people plus family get together out there about every 2 years. And the nice thing about it is to be able to see the people and to hear what some of the people have done. And that's a case where you can go in 2 years later and almost take up the conversation where it stopped 2 or 4 years previous to that. I think the military, if you're in the military in a circumstance where you not only work with someone, but you live with them, that after any number of months, a year or something like that, it's amazing the camaraderie that you have in the service. You know, when I went to flight school, I was in the first class of combat arms to go straight to helicopters. Prior to our class, there were about 22 of us, I think, who graduated. In January, we went in January of '59. Everybody had gone fixed wing, and then they took a quick course in helicopters. And along with Medical Service Corps people. Now, Medical Service Corps people had been going in to helicopters prior to that without being fixed wing rated. But our class, 59, and they called it C4, so I guess that was Combat 4. We went, because when I was assigned to Korea and got to Korea, they had changed a number code for what kind of aviators you requested. And I got over there and they were going to assign me to a unit that had 3 L-19s and a Beaver. And I said, man, I'm not even fixed wing rated. And the guy looked down and he hadn't put his changes in his orders. So I was kind of fortunate to get into that early. Part of the success of the military in this country is due to the fact that when a leader is incapacitated, there's always someone else who will take over. And we're brought up over here not to be led around by a ring in our nose, but to take charge. So that's a part of being an American.
In the early 1960s, a new kind of conflict was brewing in the jungles and rice paddies of Southeast Asia. It was a war without fronts, a war of shadows and ambushes. Conventional armies, built to fight on the plains of Europe, found themselves trapped by the terrain. The foot soldier was king, but he was also isolated vulnerable, and slow. America needed a new way to fight. The solution came not from a tank, but from a revolutionary machine developed by the Bell Helicopter Company. It was the Model 204, officially named the Iroquois. But to the troops who would soon depend on it for their very lives, it had a different name, the Huey. Its arrival in Vietnam in 1962 was a whisper, but it would soon become a roar. For the first time, commanders could move entire battalions of troops over impassable terrain, landing them directly into the heart of a battle. The Huey became the symbol of a new kind of warfare, air cavalry. It was a troop transport, a supply line, a flying ambulance that rescued the wounded from hot landing zones, and a gunship that rained down fire with rockets and miniguns. The distinctive thump-thump-thump of its two blades became the sound of the war itself, a sound of hope for some, a sound of dread for others. But this new tactic created a new vulnerability. The versatile Huey, when loaded with troops, was a large, relatively slow target. Its slick transport ships needed protection. The Hog gunships helped, but they were improvised, carrying the weight of both troops and weapons. The Army needed a dedicated hunter. This need splintered into two paths. One path was pure radical ambition. The Army's Advanced Aerial Fire Support System, or AAFSS program, sought to create the ultimate super helicopter. The winner was Lockheed's AH-56 Cheyenne, a complex rigid rotor compound helicopter with a pusher propeller, designed to be faster and more lethal than anything in the sky. It was a technological marvel.